Hi, video diary. I have my arm over my son's ashes. So it's been a few days, and some interesting things have happened to me inwardly. I told you I'd been finding books on the street and in different locations, so it isn't like a typical, like, in front of the library store. It's like across the street at this guy's place, in a hallway, and the other book I found, I forget, somewhere just on the street. Oh yeah, on Broadway. Dun dun dun. So this guy, it's not really him, but he was a slave, born a slave in the first century, around year 55. Ended up in Rome and was freed after his owner was killed. Um, Exiled. I guess all the philosophers were kicked out of Rome uh, after Nero, um, and he ended up in Greece. But the point is, I didn't know who this, and I have a degree in philosophy, and the Stoics that I studied, I just have to be honest, I just did not automatically know who Epictetus was. But we're all familiar with his philosophy because it has been woven so deeply into our Western um, tradition, particularly in the self-help department. Uh, he didn't write anything himself, but some of his stuff survives through others. But anyway, I'll just share with you this weird thing that happened tonight. So I have these beads, and sometimes I put them on, and I guess I realize it is like that term virtue signaling, where I'm saying like, oh, I'm spiritual, I'm not a Christian, blah blah blah. Whatever these are saying. I'm, they could be representing my desire to be separate from you. Like I'm a whatever this is, and you're not, and you don't even know what this is. Which is often the problem with religious garb. It doesn't connect; it separates. And I've had these since I was 17 years old. I found them in a garage sale. During the time I owned them, I intensely sat and studied Buddhism and meditation when I was in my 20s. I was in martial arts at those years and in a Buddhist kind of academy where I actually had to really study the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and their exponential explanations. And to me, that was always the essence of Buddhism. None of the magical stuff, none of the extrapolated, non self help stuff. Really, I saw Buddhism as a self help system, and one that's discoverable to anybody on their own. Like, probably if you set out to figure out what is the problem here, you would probably arrive at similar conclusions. And so did Epictetus. He did too. When I hear what he has to say, it sounds like Lao Tzu, or just Taoist, but particularly Lao Tzu. Zen, some crazy. some of the religious traditions remind me of things in India. Anyway, I want to share this with you. So I find this book on the street. I start reading it. Immediately, it has quotations. One of his things are, it's like, you can't control the things that happen to you. You can only control how you respond. And we've all heard that. And that comes from him. And the basic idea is that there are things in our control, and then there are things out of our control. And we should not suffer or make ourselves suffer because we misunderstand the difference. And, that's, I know that, like, it's like 2 + 2 is 4 somehow, and yet I'm encountering this in a time when I'm really holding on to a lot of anger and resentment. I'm not typically a person that I think does that, and I have been, on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 15 of just, more than appropriate amount of emotion because of the suffering that I'm feeling, and the loss and all that. And I know that there's something coming, behind it. I already know what it is. I've known it all along. I said it from the first day. It's like, what, now I'm going to have to, reconstruct my mind to be a better mind, because I will never see my son again, so I'm going to have to do that. And I was, resentful. Anyway, these beads. Yeah, I thought I lost them tonight. I went to my class, and I could have swore I had them, that I even brought them from home. And I'm also like, why bring them? I'm going to work out, like, they make, I say things about these that, like, they make me calm. They have accompanied me through many, like a tragedy. I don't need to bring them. No one needs to ask me, why are you different than me? What do these represent? Who are you through these that you're not without them? And that does run through my mind. And for years and years, I only started like putting them on after Forrest died. I don't even count with them. I just touch them. But I'm listening to a lot of Alan Watts and reconnecting with the really free parts of Zen and Taoism, which is, it's like, you don't want to put words out here. That, and even in the book of Tao, it says that the truth that is spoken is not the truth. It's yeah. Anyway, but I find that there's an underlying something special. There is something underlying that feels good, and I've felt it all along. Like I've been saying it. Like there's a powerful, like, natural sense of religion, or not religion, but spirituality, or, again, words, but right thinking maybe is one of the way Buddha would, By the way, I would say the Buddha would not have been a Buddhist. Neither should you. Nobody should be anything. All right, yeah, so I thought I lost them. And earlier in the day, I was listening to one of the Epictetus's little statements about owning a cup, and that if a child breaks that cup, or if you break that cup or lose it, that should you be sad? about that cup, or is it that you should be grateful that that cup had served you so well, and that it was an honor to have a cup? Evidently, to have a cup back then meant something. We take those things for granted. But to be sad about something that is impermanent, that you cannot really control. You cannot control when that cup is going to break, or when a child might knock it off of a table, or you might break it. And so ultimately you have to know that it is not something that you can own. You're sharing time with it. He even addresses this like, yeah, but what if a bad person steals my stuff? Why should I feel just like, oh, that is the right method, or that is the flow that I should follow? And he does address that as like, who are we to choose the messenger? The messenger comes and takes away things that didn't belong to you to begin with. It's pretty weird. It's pretty awesome. This idea that you have to know and be distinct in your mind about the things that you can control. Like we can't control like how our bodies are inside. Like we don't know how we breathe or digest, or if there's cancer, or if we just don't know. Those things are happening, and we're in here, and we can't control that. That's pretty close to us. You can definitely make your body a lot better, and there's things that you can, in the long game do. But even then, like, people get sick. Even when they've been healthy all their lives, they can get sick and die. So the idea to know the difference. And he says the only things that we can really control are things like our opinions, how we interpret something. Sometimes how we feel about it is pretty immediate. We might feel a certain way, and we would need to take that in and understand it a little bit. But to understand the difference, and when something is beyond our control, we need to work with it in that way. Yeah, so I thought I lost these. I left when you leave something in New York City or drop something, I even thought like, okay, there was a moment, I guess, when I took them out of my headphones out of my pocket, and they must have slipped out. And I thought like, well, I read about that story about the cup, and I realized like I don't need these. There's nothing intrinsically about them that are mine, except that I've had the good fortune to share time with them. Because they're aesthetically so pleasing, and I used to count on them, and that was a strong meditational tool. Maybe I will again. But the point was, I let go of these things. I fucking let go of them. I was like, I had to respond in some way that I found this on the street, and say goodbye and thank you. And I hope that somebody picked them up, who'd love them. And then I came back to my house, and they were in the drawer. So it's like they were given to me again, which is something that just feels really crazy. So in this, if the cup is broken, you have to realize you shouldn't be so affected by it. And other people seeing you so affected by a broken particular cup would say, like, what's up with them? He can get another cup. He should be grateful for cupness. And then he says, apply this to greater things. Is the child or wife of another dead? There is no one who would not say that this is an accident of mortality. But if anyone's own child happened to die, it is immediately, alas, how wretched am I. It should always be remembered that how we are affected on hearing the same thing concerning others. Wow. So I will tell you, when I've heard of other, even OD deaths, I have been like, well, of course that was going to happen. And how dare your kid be such a selfish fuck to do this to you? And, and then I look at my situation and feel that I have felt this way. And then I'm realizing, or I'm opening myself to the thought, and I know it's the truth, that Forrest was not mine. That his life was his own. And it was, what he did was out of my control. And his death, and all death, even his unnatural death, is unavoidable on some level, on a primary materialistic, deterministic level. It's a given. When it occurs, we don't know. And so it occurred. And I will enslave myself to very powerful and destructive things. But they're untrue things also, because of not understanding that this is not one of the areas in which I can wage battle. All I can do is be free in my mind and control things there. And then that other layer is acceptance, like that I don't think he believed in God per se. There were gods spoken of, but there was a sense that, like, fate, creator, whatever, Brahman, everything else, Tao, nothingness. We're part of that. And we cannot control that. And knowing the difference, and this is very much written in the Book of Tao, that a wise man, like, gets out of the way of the flood. Doesn't try to stop it. That's all I have to say.